Hi, welcome to another episode of Bethany Talks About Stuff. I'm your host, Bethany of DeVors, author of the Sea of Dressing Chronicles, available from Amazon. And I am a glutton for punishment, so today I have with me Rick DeVors, who has suddenly clammed up, which is extremely uncharacteristic.
I was wearing sunglasses and was told I could not, so I'm pouting now.
That is characteristic.
That's correct.
Yes. So I brought Rick on for a very specific purpose. So a lot of you may have watched Netflix's documentary called Making a Murderer, talking about someone named Steve Avery. And basically the documentary suggests that maybe he was falsely convicted of a crime for which he served 18 years in prison. And that turned out to be true. He was legitimately falsely accused. DNA exonerated him. So that was a miscarriage of justice. It was terrible, However, he is currently in prison for murder. And this documentary is trying to make the case that he did not technically commit the second murder, but that he was framed because he has a lawsuit against that county's law enforcement agency. So at face value, okay, you can kind of see where people might be like, well, did they really do that? Is he really guilty? And that's a fair question to ask. It's totally fine to evaluate facts and data that have been presented, but they need to be presented in total and fairly. So I have been watching Convicting a Murderer, which was produced by Candace Owens. Now, left, right, center, we all should want the truth, right? The documentary Rebuttal points out all of the things that were left out of the Netflix documentary. And one of the things that struck me the most was that there was video of the trial and testimony that was edited to genuinely make it look like the person being questioned said yes to a question they absolutely did not say yes to. In fact, the question was posed, the judge or the prosecutor objected, and the judge sustained it. So the witness actually did not answer that question at all. But they cut all of that out and then went straight to his answer for the next question, which was yes. And it had nothing, they were not related. So it was really dishonest. And this happens a lot more, I think, than people realize. And unless you go back to the actual source material, you have to kind of question everything. So all of that to explain what we're doing today, which is I have brought Rick on the show. I am going to ask him about romance and his views on romance and love, romantic love. And then I'm going to edit it and show you how much you can edit things to say something totally different than what happened in reality. Now, I do want to make it clear, I edit all of my videos, but normally it is in the interest of time or relevance. Occasionally, I'll have a guest on and we just totally rabbit trail. I might cut a whole section, but I do not edit in a way that changes their answer or their statement about something or to a question. I do cut out a lot of the ums, because I have a lot of those myself. So just to be completely transparent, you can tell I edit, I'm editing for time.
So the gist of this is, if I'm to gather this correctly, is that you're going to try to edit this enough to make me out to be a hopeless romantic, which I am not.
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm going to try.
May the odds be in your favor.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Fair enough. Before we started recording, I told Rick that I'm going to do my best to ask questions that when people see the truthful, unedited, like not for time, version, that they won't totally lose all respect for him. But I can't guarantee anything because if I can't edit it, there's only so much I can do.
I have these, so when I leave, no one knows who I am.
All right. Have you ever been in love?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever been in love?
Have I been in lust? Yes, I have.
That was not the question.
But that's the answer.
What advice would you give to young men in reference to love?
I like women. That help? So young men, let me look at you. Young men, you can enjoy this life too.
What advice would you give to young men in reference to love?
Where to begin?
Remember, an unedited version of this is going to be
Where
on the
to
internet.
begin? So young men, let me look at you. Young men, just say no. I know many of you are too young to remember Nancy Reagan and drugs. Just say no. Well, Uncle Rick's here to tell you, just say no to marriage. Just say
no. Have you ever read a romance novel?
Yes, I have.
Have you liked any of them?
Sure.
Have you ever read a romance novel?
No.
Would you?
No.
Even if it was really good?
No.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Would you like to weigh in, though, on this topic?
So first of all, just to give some background about me, I am currently the commander of a criminal investigative unit for a sheriff's office here in South Carolina. Prior to this, I was the head of a homicide unit. So I know a little bit about investigating homicides and criminal activity. If we had been in that situation where we had an individual who had a current lawsuit against our agency and another crime had occurred, we probably would have asked another agency to investigate that crime.
Yes, they did.
Okay, so
I mean, they had to be. It's a very small town.
Usually, you get a state agency to assist you at that point.
But they did actually get an outside agency to come help. So
that's smart.
And that was one of the things they pointed out in Convicting a Murderer, the one that's rebutting Netflix, is to say yes, their agency was involved, but they did bring in an outside agency as well.
Well, I mean, you don't have a choice but to be involved if the crime occurs in your jurisdiction. You're obviously going to respond to that crime until you figure out what's going on. But yeah, that was wise to include, like I said, I've never seen either one of these specials, but that's wise to include an outside agency in that investigation.
I'm not even trying to tell people not to watch Making a Murderer on Netflix, but if you're going to watch that, I think you ought to watch The Rebuttal, because I feel like that documentary was very dishonest just based on what I've seen so far. They've really made a big deal out of things that really, they manipulated a lot of data. But yeah, I mean, some of the evidence was found by the local law enforcement. So they've hung a lot of their hats on, well, it was found by that local law enforcement agency and they're just out to get him. But if you see the full big picture, like they weren't out to get him. They were not. I mean, I'm sorry. I know I haven't seen the whole Convicting a Murderer series yet because they haven't released all of it. But I'm telling you that man.
But the reality is, if you ask, I know in our state, if we ask, we have a state investigative agency that assists us in many of our investigations, and sometimes they have to take over our investigations just because of that conflicts of interest. They will go back and review the evidence that we have submitted to them to make sure that it was properly collected, because that's their name on the line now, not the local agency. It's now the state agency's name on the line. Right. And they're going to make sure that evidence was collected properly and handled properly and processed properly. The media is very biased against law enforcement. If you haven't figured that out, my agency, we have, and I can't say a whole lot, but we have one reporter who doesn't even report in our area, who just targets our agency constantly with negative stories, which are absolutely untrue. But we have no recourse. I mean,
nobody's gatekeeping. I mean, like, there has to be some standard of truth. You really should not be able to just go out and make stuff up. And I'm telling you, like, just seeing, even if I had seen nothing else countered from Making a Murderer to Convicting a Murderer, seeing that they cut out a whole several minutes of testimony to make it seem like this guy answered a question he didn't even answer was so dishonest that it just put shadow of doubt over everything else that they presented in their documentary.
But that's not just that. Look at the releases that you get from the media for body cam footage. And I won't even mention names, but you can go back and look at the snippets that have caused riots in this country, and then go back and look at the total footage to get some context. And then you realize, well, maybe it wasn't quite what they said it was after all.
More to the story.
Yeah, there's always more to the story. A 5-second or 10-second snippet is not going to tell you the true story.
No. Of course, there are bad apples, and they should be held accountable to the full extent of the law. But we should be willing to do our due diligence and see context before we just railroad people.
Well, how do you think it feels for the law enforcement agency? It's very disheartening, but I will tell you this much. I guarantee that every time someone dials 911, that agency still responds.
Right.
No matter what everybody else says about it, they're still going to do their job.
Yeah.
And that's all we can do.
I wanted to put this out there because maybe you're somebody who hasn't been as exposed to this thought process before. And I just wanted to put it out there on my channel, because you might not see it somewhere else, that it's very easy to manipulate this stuff, and so really need to be willing to do some of your own footwork. I mean, all it would take is to go find the transcript from the courtroom and read it, and you can see that it was dishonest. But obviously, like I said, left, right, center, it doesn't matter. We should all want the truth. So this was just an exercise to show you guys that it is easy to manipulate media to make a narrative that you want to push. And that happens on both sides of the coin. And I think it's just important to do a little more research and to look for context before you jump to any conclusions on either side of the line. So anyway, that was it. I appreciate Rick coming on the show and doing this with me, being a good sport. And hopefully I can actually edit enough of this to make him sound like a nicer person about romance.
Yeah, I'm ready to leave incognito.
Just please leave us comments below. Keep it as civil as you can.
I'm going to use this to my advantage. Drop me your digits in the comments
please
section.
Please don't do that. Oh my word. Please don't do that.
And look up www.UncleRickKnowsBest.Rick.
That's not a real site. I'm just letting you know.
It might be by tonight.
Okay, so just leave us your comments below, and I hope that you got something out of this, and you guys will be back to pop culture very soon. But I just wanted to get this out there. So until next time, that's it for now.
Bye.
Bye.